Hello and welcome to this ETE tutor video that's for Edexcel GCSE English Language, Paper 2, your reading, so that's section A. And in this video we're going to be having a look at question number 3, which people do struggle with a little bit. So hopefully what we're going to do now is really going to help. It will also be helpful for students who are doing the AQA paper, Writers' Viewpoints and Perspectives, but your question's slightly different. Your question is focused on language. So as I'm talking about the language features, you can still apply that to your own studies. Okay, you just need to know that this is a 12-mark question for you and the actual mark scheme is going to be slightly different. So check those out as well. Right, so the Edexcel question. Question number 3 is always going to be Analyse. So that straight away gives you the go-ahead to get into a bit more depth this time around and show off all your analytical, your critical skills. What you're looking at is how the writer uses language and structure to engage the reader, supporting all your ideas with references to the text. So that can be paraphrasing or quotations. If you're talking about language use, then quotations are the way to go. Alright, so it's 15 marks, so roughly 15 minutes. By this time you'll have got quite familiar with the text. If this is the first video you're watching and you haven't looked at the text at all yet, it might be useful to go back because I talk about language in the previous videos as well. The text is in the description box though, so if you just want to have a look at that now, that's great too. So, what we need to be doing for this response is locating language and structural devices using the appropriate subject terminology, giving the evidence of those devices, and then analysing how, so the way in which, how they do it, how these devices engage the reader in this question. So you'll be looking to fill the space you've got. So we're thinking around 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, but it is the quality, not the quantity. So we don't just want a long list of all the features. We do need to make sure they're explained well as well. So language, you'll be considering the vocabulary choices. You'd be thinking about the different devices you're aware of. And then with structure, you'll be thinking about the sentence types, the forms, the lengths, the use of punctuation, the paragraphing, and so on. You've got to cover both of these. So in those 3 to 5 paragraphs, you must make sure that you give at least one example of structure. That seems to be where people do struggle more. So make sure you've got a really strong example of structure and then some of language, or a good balance of the two. Okay, well that's all said and done. What we need to do is really get into this text and help you spot stuff. So the bits that are highlighted in yellow are things that we've already commented on about language, so they're in the previous video, so you might want to have a look at them. But we'll try and find some new bits now, see what else we can find, and obviously we haven't talked about structure yet, so we need to do that as well. I would suggest that you pause the video now and keep reading through and try and come up with some ideas. And then, hopefully, when you're listening to mine, some of them will match up. Doesn't matter if you've not said the things that I've said. There's not a list of the things that you have to comment on. As long as you can justify your arguments, it makes logical sense, you've got the quote and you've got the analysis, then you're okay. Right, let me pick a bit that I think it'll be worthwhile as mentioning. Right, just zooming in. we can see we've got some questions here. It's always good to look out for punctuation. So this could be seen as a language or a structural point. It can get a little bit of a grey area. So this is a good one that kind of falls into both, because we're talking about the sentence structures, but we're also thinking about the language as well. So what we've got here is, need fire extinguishers to tick the safety box? Hire them in for a day. The lift is a death trap? Stick a sign on it to say it's out of use and the inspector will pass it by. The dark arts thrive in the inspection business. So the use of the rhetorical questions here is to engage the reader in terms of making them pause and think about the reality of this situation. They clearly believe that it's a terrible situation, so they want us to agree with them. It's a persuasive piece. So the rhetorical questions are persuasive because they make the reader consider their own beliefs and actions. And we've got a question and answer scenario here going on as well. So this will really emphasise and give some proof that what's been said in the previous paragraph about how the work of the auditors doesn't actually reflect reality is being explained in more detail here. So that would be a good one that you could go for. You might also want to comment on the headline itself if you've got one, because there's going to be lots of stuff in there. So here we can think about the structure again. Actually, you could talk about the structure of this whole piece. So admit it. Hopefully you know what language feature that is. So yeah, you could mention this. So we've got that imperative. You must do this. You've got to admit it. You love cheap clothes and you don't care about child slave labour. So it's quite aggressive in its tone. So you could pick out that part there and say that that type of sentence, that imperative, that instruction, engages the reader by making them feel that they're already a part of this text. That's the same way the word you works as well here. So there'd be another good one that you could go for. Okay, we'll have a little bit more of a look, just push it a bit further for you. You could maybe suggest there was a little bit of hyperbole here. So we've got the real books show profits from 16-hour days and no days off all month. So it could be that you argued that that's exaggeration. I'm not completely convinced with that one because we haven't got any proof as readers, and given the other information we've got, you might feel that that's possibly a realistic piece of information. So it's quite interesting when we're thinking about what's presented as fact and whether or not it is a fact. Okay, final thing that we've got is this repetition of the word cheap. So at the beginning we've got cheap clothes, we've also got that alliteration there, and then we learn all about this situation, and then these cheap clothes become shiny pretty things, and the repetition of the word cheap is used here to justify why the Western consumers feel that it's okay to buy these garments because we can't afford it and those places are very cheap to live in. So overall you can really see that the piece is quite accusatory in nature and quite aggressive in its tone. So as long as you mentioned a few of those things, 3 or 4 paragraphs, you'll be fine. If you're looking for something a little bit more simple, there is lots of descriptive language here. Stinking open drains, brutal conditions. So the use of those adjectives is something else that you could use, and that's engaging the reader by helping them to imagine a world that's very different from their own. Okay, I hope that that's made sense and hasn't been too rambling. This question's quite difficult to discuss because people are working at so many different levels in terms of what they can see and how they can explain it. So hopefully I've covered some of those safer points and some of the more technical points. As always, remember to check out the other videos in this series, and make sure if you do have any comments, you use the comment section below, and like and subscribe.